Hi, this is Tom with World Class Coaching with another animated drill. This is a 1v1 environment that I adapted slightly. I've used something similar to this. If you go back and look at the video on 1v1 flying changes, it's similar to that, but the difference here being that when a player scores through the cones, I mean, it's a simple setup here, but when they score through the cones, then the player receiving the ball through the cones then attacks right away. So it's instead of being a shot on goal or trying to finish on a target, it's more about passing to the player's feet. So the basic setup here is it can be a 10 by 12. It can be something fairly tight depending on the age and the ability level of your players. It might be smaller. It might be slightly bigger. The idea of it being a rectangle, I think, is important. The idea of it being fairly narrow, I think, is good because it encourages the players to be direct but still give them room to create angles. And so we start off with one team with the ball in the middle and the other team defending. And oftentimes what I'll do to start this is have the player back here pass to the other player and then pressure. That's the last time in the activity that that happens. So it's not as important. You can start it with a drop ball in the middle, however you want to start it. The idea being that the player with the ball tries to beat the defender, create an angle, and then find a pass into the player on the other end. Now, obviously, that's not that player's teammate, but it doesn't matter. You could have them, think about them as a goalkeeper. You could think about them in other ways. But the idea here really isn't to shoot past the goalie, though. It's to pass the ball to this player's feet. And so as soon as this player receives the ball at their feet, their teammate who's just finished runs off. And then this player then attacks the player that was attacking. So now we switch those roles from attack to defense. And this player needs to defend as the player with the ball tries to then get past that defender and again find a pass. When I did this with my team, I was really focusing on getting the players to move laterally with the ball instead of always trying to penetrate and forcing it and ending up running into the defender and putting themselves into a tackle. We've done a lot of fast footwork, a lot of lateral movement activity where we were trying to beat the defender by faking them one way, bringing them to this side perhaps, and then taking them the other way. And if I can get the players thinking fake one way, go the other, and then create that opening to find the pass. The other thing I like about this is it gets the player with the ball focused not on shooting after beating a player, but keeping their head up and finding a connecting pass. And that's obviously something realistic to the game. If this is a midfield player looking up to try to find that striker, trying to find that penetrating ball, or even a defender trying to create a bit of space away from a pressuring attacker to then find a midfield player. But just those ideas of moving laterally, finding the gap, keeping their head up so they can find the target, keeping this target small, maybe 2 yards for most players. If you wanted to make it 3, if you're working with very young players and they weren't having success, maybe kind of a regression you could make would be to make it bigger. If they were still having trouble, you could even allow this player to move along the line in order to receive the pass. They don't have a lot of motivation to do that, though, do they? Because they're on the other team. So, really, I think the target is the best way to go. Perhaps you could create multiple targets and say there's a target here, there, and there, and no matter which ball or which target the ball went through, then this player had a ball ready to dribble out and start again. So that would be maybe another way to regress it. But I like this idea of finding the target, moving laterally, and the constant interchanging and the constant transition from attack to defense keeps everybody involved. You play the first team to 10 goals wins. So every time that player then passes the ball through, then we have a new player coming on. And it's that continuous flow to the activity that keeps it interesting and keeps it competitive. I would keep the groups small. I would keep them no more than 6. 4 works very well, but definitely no more than 6. Otherwise, you end up with too much standing and too much waiting. 2 players on each team, 3 at the max. One last thing is how we deal with balls that go out of bounds. If this player has the ball and it goes out of bounds on this side, then the player on this team gets the ball. The player that was on the field defending retreats off, and we go. And so that's how we rotate. If the ball goes out of bounds on the side, and let's say the black player touched it last, both players go off, but the yellow team gets the ball to start with coming this direction. so that they, obviously they didn't lose the ball out of bounds, so they get the ball. And so that's how we deal with balls going out of bounds, either on the side or on the ends.